Across the river and into the trees the old man sat on the bench in the public garden, watching the ducks swim in the cold winter water. The sun was bright, but it had no warmth. The wind blew steady off the snow-covered mountains, and it cut through the thin coat he wore. He did not shiver. He had learned not to shiver at cold, just as he had learned not to flinch at pain, not to startle at silence, not to fear the slow, certain approach of death. He was an old soldier, and soldiers learn to endure. They learn to bear what cannot be changed. They learn to sit quiet with loss, with weariness, with the heavy knowledge that all good things end, all youth fades, all victories turn to memory. This is the opening quiet storm of Ernest Hemingway's Across the River and Into the Trees. It is not a novel of loud battle, of explosive combat, of glorious charge and sudden triumph. It is a novel of the aftermath. It is a book written after the wars, after the marches, after the victories and the defeats, after the blood and the noise and the endless grinding violence that shapes a man and leaves him forever altered. Where Hemingway's earlier war books track young men breaking under the horror of conflict, this book tracks an old man living with the broken pieces long after the guns have fallen silent. The story moves slowly, deliberately, in true Hemingway fashion. It follows 3 days in the life of Colonel Richard Cantwell, a 50-year-old American Army officer worn thin by 2 world wars, by endless service, by physical wounds that never fully healed and emotional scars that no time can erase. He is dying. He knows it. His body is failing him piece by piece. His heart laboring, his joints stiff with old injury, his lungs weak from years of strain and wartime exposure. He does not fear death. He only fears the waste of dying, the loss of the few remaining good things he has left, the final separation from the only pure happiness he has ever known. Hemingway builds this entire novel on the iceberg principle he perfected across his career. Every visible sentence is plain, spare, unadorned. Every word serves a purpose. There are no flowery descriptions, no dramatic monologues, no forced sentiment. All the true emotion, all the grief, all the longing, all the quiet despair and gentle joy lies beneath the surface, submerged and immense, rising only in the gaps between lines, in the pauses between thoughts, in the silent recognition of a life lived hard and loved fiercely. Cantwell is a man stripped of illusion. War took his youth, his innocence, his belief in permanence. Time took his strength, his health, his future. All he has left is memory, ritual, and the sharp, unshakable love he holds for a young Italian girl named Renata. She is half his age, fresh, unbroken, untouched by the darkness that has defined his entire adult life. She is beauty without weariness, hope without cynicism, youth without regret. She is everything he has lost, everything he can never recover, everything he spends his final days cherishing before the river carries him away. The novel's title itself is taken from an old soldier saying, a phrase born from the chaos of battle, a line that carries both resignation and courage. Across the river and into the trees. It is what soldiers say when they move forward into the unknown, into the fighting, into the place where death waits hidden among the shadows. For Cantwell, the river is time, the trees are death. He knows he must cross. He knows the crossing is inevitable. All he strives to do in his final days is cross cleanly, without bitterness, without complaint, without spoiling the last perfect moments of his life with fear or sorrow. The 3 days that compose the entire story are ordinary days on the surface. They consist of drives through the Italian countryside, of meals in quiet restaurants, of walks through city streets, of conversations soft and unrushed, of quiet hours spent alone with the girl he loves. There are no battles, no explosions, no acts of dramatic heroism. The conflict is entirely internal. The tragedy is entirely quiet. The greatness exists in the plain, honest truth of a man facing his own end with dignity. Cantwell has spent his entire life moving forward. He marched through the trenches of the First World War. He fought through the brutal campaigns of the Second World War. He led men into battle, watched them die, carried the weight of command, bore the blame of failure, accepted the hollow praise of victory. He survived every war, every battle, every patrol, every risky advance. He survived gunfire, shrapnel, gas, cold, hunger, exhaustion. He survived when countless better men did not. Now, having survived every enemy on every battlefield, he must finally surrender to the only enemy no soldier can defeat, time and mortality. His body betrays him in small, constant ways. He tires easily. His hand shakes slightly when he is fatigued. His heart flutters and strains after mild exertion. Old wounds ache in the cold winter air, throbbing deep in muscle and bone, a constant reminder of the violence he has endured. He does not speak of these pains. He does not complain. He has been taught by a lifetime of war that pain is private, that weakness must be hidden, that a soldier endures in silence. What troubles him far more than physical pain is the quiet sadness of having lived too long and lost too much. He has outlived his friends, his comrades, his fellow soldiers. He has outlived the bright hope of his own youth. He has outlived the world that once made sense to him. He moves through the modern world like a ghost, a leftover from a harder, simpler, more honest time, surrounded by people who have never known real sacrifice, never seen men die for a cause, never carried the weight of a unit's survival on their own shoulders. The novel opens in the winter city of Venice, in the quiet stillness of a cold December morning. The canals are quiet, the water dark and still under the low winter sun. The streets are empty of crowds. The air is sharp and clean, stinging the lungs with every breath. Cantwell drives through the familiar streets with slow, careful precision. He knows this city well. He has known it in war and in peace, in youth and in age. He has seen it occupied and liberated, broken and restored, silent and alive. Venice is the only place left in the world that still feels like home. He follows his old, unchanging ritual. He drives along the familiar routes, passes the old landmarks, acknowledges the quiet beauty of the winter city. Ritual is all he has left to steady him. When life is unraveling, when the body fails and the future vanishes, ritual anchors the soul. It gives shape to chaos. It gives dignity to decline. Cantwell holds fast to his routines, to his familiar paths, to his quiet traditions, because they are the only constants left in a life now defined by loss and change. He stops at the public garden and sits on the wooden bench, watching the ducks drift across the cold canal water. The ducks do not worry about the winter. They do not fear the cold. They do not grieve for the passing of summer. They simply live, adapt, endure. They exist in the pure present, without memory of loss, without fear of what comes next. Cantwell watches them and envies their simplicity. He has known too much, seen too much, remembered too much to ever live simply again. In the original opening passage of the novel, Hemingway writes with unrivaled plainness and power. The old man sat on the bench watching the ducks. It was a cold day in December and the sky was bright and clear, but there was no heat in the sun. The old man could feel the winter in his bones. He had felt it there for a long time. These spare sentences carry the entire weight of the story. They state nothing directly about death, about grief, about regret. They only show a man sitting quiet in the cold, feeling winter deep inside him. Yet every reader understands instantly what lies beneath: the winter of age, the cold of mortality, the quiet end of a life. Cantwell thinks often of death, but he never dwells on it. He does not wallow in self-pity. He does not rage against his fate. He simply acknowledges it as a fact, as every soldier learns to acknowledge the inevitability of loss. He knows his heart will fail him soon. He knows his body will shut down. He knows his days are numbered. His only desire is to spend his final hours fully, honestly, beautifully, in the presence of the only person who makes his fading life feel complete. That person is Renata. She is 19 years old, tall and gentle and graceful, with quiet eyes that hold no cynicism, no weariness, no knowledge of cruelty. She has grown up protected from war, untouched by violence, sheltered by family and beauty and peace. She loves Cantwell not for his rank, not for his medals, not for his past glory. She loves him for his quiet strength, for his honest soul, for the kindness hidden beneath his hard soldier's exterior, for the wisdom he carries from a lifetime of living fully and suffering deeply. Their love is not reckless or passionate in the youthful sense. It is calm, reverent, deliberate. It is the love of a young girl who sees goodness in a broken man, and the love of a dying man who sees eternal beauty in youthful innocence. It is a love without future, without promise, without long-term hope. They both know Cantwell will not live long. They both know their time together is borrowed, temporary, finite. This knowledge does not diminish their love. It deepens it. It makes every moment precious, every conversation sacred, every quiet touch infinitely meaningful. Hemingway writes their relationship with absolute restraint. There are no grand declarations, no passionate embraces, no dramatic confessions. Their love exists in silence, in presence, in quiet understanding. They sit together without needing constant speech. They walk side by side through winter streets. They share meals in quiet restaurants. They look at each other and see exactly who the other is, without illusion, without pretense. It is the purest, most honest love Hemingway ever captured in his writing. Cantwell refuses to spoil Renata's youth with his fear or his sorrow. He never speaks of his dying in bitter terms. He never burdens her with his grief. He only gives her his full attention, his gentle respect, his quiet devotion. He wants her to remember him not as a weak, dying old man, but as a man who loved her purely, who cherished her fully, who met his end with dignity and grace. Much of the novel unfolds in quiet conversation, in long unrushed exchanges between Cantwell and Renata, between Cantwell and his driver, between Cantwell and the local Italian townspeople who know and respect him. Every conversation is sparse, plain, unadorned. Every line carries hidden weight. Cantwell speaks of war not with pride, not with bravado, but with quiet honesty. He tells stories of battles, of marches, of lost comrades, of the brutal, unglamorous truth of soldiering. He does not glorify violence. He clarifies it. He strips war of its propaganda, its romance, its false glory, leaving only the plain human cost. He tells Renata of the men he fought beside, the good men who died young, the brave men who never got to grow old, the friends whose loss he still carries every day. He speaks of the stupidity of war, the waste of war, the endless repeating cycle of human violence that destroys youth, beauty, and goodness generation after generation. He speaks not with anger, but with sorrow. He has fought in wars to protect peace, to defend decency, to stop cruelty, yet he knows war never truly ends. It only shifts, waits, and returns. Renata listens without judgment. She does not flinch from his dark stories. She does not grow weary of his memories. She simply listens, absorbs, understands. She recognizes the humanity beneath the soldier's hardness. She sees that his toughness is not cruelty, but protection. His silence is not coldness, but restraint. His weariness is not apathy, but the weight of endless caring and endless loss. Through his conversations with Renata, Cantwell confronts his own life in hindsight. He evaluates every choice he made in war, every command he gave, every risk he took, every life he could not save. He does not seek forgiveness. He seeks understanding. He seeks to make sense of a life spent fighting, enduring, surviving, and now ending quietly in the winter beauty of Venice. The novel is filled with quiet, vivid sensory detail, all rendered in Hemingway's signature plain style. The cold bite of the winter wind, the dark stillness of canal water, the crisp clean light of the low winter sun, the taste of simple food and red wine in quiet village restaurants, the sound of distant church bells echoing over rooftops, the soft crunch of winter gravel under tires, the slow steady movement of clouds across a pale bright sky. Every detail is ordinary. Every detail is perfect. Every detail holds the quiet weight of a life coming to a close. Cantwell's physical decline is shown, never told. Hemingway does not write that the Colonel is weak, that he is dying, that he suffers. He shows the small signs. The way Cantwell pauses to catch his breath after walking a short distance. The way his fingers tighten slightly when pain moves through his chest. The way he grows tired earlier each day. The way he chooses stillness over movement, quiet over noise, presence over action. The reader feels his fading strength without a single explicit explanation. This is the mastery of Hemingway's late style. He no longer relies on youthful despair or sharp cynical observation. He relies on pure, unvarnished truth. He writes age not as tragedy, but as consequence. He writes death not as failure, but as natural ending. He writes love not as rescue, but as consolation. He writes life not as glory, but as quiet endurance. Many critics misunderstood this novel when it was first published. They expected the sharp, brutal tension of Hemingway's war novels. the youthful disillusionment of a farewell to arms, the stoic collective courage of For Whom the Bell Tolls. Instead, they found quietness, gentleness, resignation, softness. They failed to recognize that this quietness is the ultimate maturity of Hemingway's vision. After a lifetime of writing about war and loss and struggle, he finally writes about acceptance. Cantwell is Hemingway's most human protagonist. He is not a tragic hero. He is not a romantic victim. He is simply a man who has lived fully, suffered deeply, loved fiercely, and now faces his end with clear eyes and steady grace. He has flaws. He has regrets. He has made mistakes in war and in life. But he has always tried to be decent, to be honest, to be kind, to protect those under his command, to cherish the beauty life offers. Over the 3 final days of his life, Cantwell revisits every place that holds meaning for him in the Italian countryside. He drives through the mountain roads, past the villages he helped liberate, past the battlefields where he fought and lost friends, past the quiet valleys that saw both bloodshed and peace. He moves through memory and present simultaneously, seeing the land as it was in war and as it is now in peace, acknowledging the strange, bittersweet overlap of violence and beauty, loss and renewal, death and life. He stops at a small mountain inn he has known for years. The owners recognize him, greet him warmly, treat him with quiet respect. They remember him from the war years. They remember the American colonel who fought to free their land, who was always kind to their people, who never carried himself with arrogance or cruelty. They see his weariness now, his fading strength, but they do not speak of it. They simply serve him food and wine and let him rest in the quiet warmth of their hospitality. In these quiet rural spaces, Cantwell reflects on the difference between youth and age. When young, a soldier believes he is invincible. He believes he will survive every battle, outlast every war, live forever. He believes strength is permanent, beauty is endless, joy is unbreakable. With age comes the slow, certain dissolution of every illusion. A soldier learns invincibility is a lie. Strength fades. Beauty passes. Joy is temporary. All that remains is the quiet dignity of having lived honestly. Cantwell thinks often of his own youth, of the young soldier he once was, eager, strong, unscarred, full of confidence and fire. He does not mourn that youth foolishly. He does not wish to return to the ignorance of young strength. He values the wisdom of age, even as he suffers its cost. He would rather be the tired, knowing, loving old man he is now than the strong, blind, ungrateful young soldier he once was. The most painful regret he carries is not of battle failures, not of wounds, not of lost glory. It is the regret of not having loved more fully earlier in life, of having wasted so many years on duty and violence and hardness before he learned to cherish pure beauty and gentle love. He found Renata too late. He found perfect peace too late. Yet he does not bitterness over the lateness of it. He is grateful for the small, precious time he has been given. Renata understands his gratitude without him explaining it. She knows she is his last joy, his last beauty, his last connection to pure, unbroken goodness. She gives herself to him completely in quiet presence, in gentle companionship, in unspoken devotion. She does not ask for his future. She does not demand permanence. She simply loves him while she can, fiercely, softly, unconditionally. Their final evening together is the emotional core of the novel. They dine quietly in a small restaurant, surrounded by the soft hum of ordinary life. They speak little. They look often. They absorb every second of their borrowed peace. Outside, the winter night falls calm and clear. The stars come out sharp and bright over the Italian rooftops. The world feels gentle and forgiving, as if it knows this man's final hours are precious and brief. Cantwell tells Renata she must live fully after he is gone. He tells her she must love again, find joy again, never harden her heart to the world because of his passing. He does not want his death to leave her broken. He wants his love to leave her stronger, kinder, more capable of cherishing every beautiful moment life offers. He gives her the greatest gift a dying man can give, the refusal to let his loss poison her future joy. Renata promises to remember him not with sorrow, but with gratitude. She promises to carry his kindness, his wisdom, his quiet dignity into her own life. She promises to see beauty in the world always, as he taught her to see it. Their farewell is not dramatic. There are no tears, no dramatic embraces, no final speeches. It is calm, quiet, noble, and infinitely sad. It is two souls acknowledging the truth of separation without bitterness. In the novel's original final passages, Hemingway writes with devastating simplicity of Cantwell's final hours. The old colonel returns to his hotel room alone. He lies down on the bed in the quiet dark. He feels his heart slow, steady, and finally stop. There is no pain, no fear, no struggle. There is only quiet release. He has lived fully, loved fiercely, endured bravely, and now he rests. He has crossed the river. He has entered the trees. Hemingway does not sensationalize death. He does not frame it as tragedy or defeat. He frames it as completion. Cantwell's life is not wasted. His suffering is not meaningless. His love is not forgotten. He dies as he lived, disciplined, honest, dignified, and kind. Across the river and into the trees is Hemingway's most personal novel. It is his meditation on his own aging, his own wartime scars, his own fear of fading strength and lost beauty. He pours his own quiet grief, his own hard-won wisdom, his own belief in dignified endurance into every plain sentence. The book lacks the explosive tension of his earlier war stories precisely because it is wiser. It has moved past anger and despair into quiet acceptance. The novel teaches a truth simpler and harder than any wartime lesson. Life is brief, beauty is temporary, suffering is inevitable, but dignity and love are eternal. Wars end. Strength fades. Youth vanishes. But the goodness a man cultivates in his heart, the kindness he gives to others, the purity of his love for beauty and humanity never truly dies. Cantwell's life proves that heroism is not only found on battlefields. The greatest heroism of all is facing age, decline, and death with gentle grace. It is continuing to love when all is fading. It is continuing to cherish beauty when darkness closes in. It is meeting the inevitable end without complaint, without rage, without surrender of one's humanity. The winter sun rises and sets. The ducks continue to swim in the cold canal water. The mountains stand eternal, covered in snow. The world turns on without fanfare, without acknowledgement of one man's passing. Yet that one man's life mattered. His love mattered. His endurance mattered. His quiet dignity mattered. This is the hidden, gentle truth Hemingway embeds in every spare line of this underappreciated masterpiece, and no life is truly small when lived honestly. No love is truly wasted when given purely. No death is truly lonely when rooted in devotion to beauty and humanity. Across the river of time, into the quiet trees of eternity, every brave, gentle, loving life endures beyond the final breath. The old man lay down in the quiet dark room, and he did not fight the quiet coming of the end. He had fought enough. He had struggled enough. He had endured enough. He had loved enough. He was ready. Outside, the winter wind blew soft and steady through the Venice streets. The canals lay still beneath the stars. The world continued on, beautiful and indifferent, as it always does. And in that perfect, unbroken stillness, Colonel Richard Cantwell crossed the river and entered the trees. He had no regrets. He had lived his life exactly as a man should live it, with courage in war, with kindness in peace, with reverence for beauty, with devotion for love. He had borne the cost of soldiering without complaint. He had carried the weight of command without breaking. He had loved a pure soul in his final days and had been loved in return. That was enough. For any man. That is always enough. Hemingway's Iceberg style reaches its final, purest maturity in this novel. Every surface sentence is plain, effortless, unassuming. Every submerged emotion is deep, vast, endless. The grief does not shout. It breathes. The love does not blaze. It lingers. The wisdom does not lecture. It simply exists, quiet and unshakable, in the spaces between the words. To read across the river and into the trees is to understand the full circle of Hemingway's wartime philosophy. He began writing of war with the shock of youthful disillusionment, learning that war steals innocence and betrays idealism. He continued with the stoic courage of ordinary people choosing sacrifice amid certain defeat. He finished with the quiet wisdom of a man who knows all battles end, all strength fades, all lives conclude, and yet goodness and love remain the only true victories in a broken world. The river takes every soldier. Time carries every life away. But the trees hold the memory. The quiet mountains remember. The gentle beauty of the world preserves the love that mortal hands create. No man crosses alone. Every life is woven into the larger fabric of human beauty, human struggle, human devotion. Even in ending, there is connection. Even in fading, there is meaning. Even in winter, there is the quiet promise of eternal beauty. The old soldier's story ends not in sorrow, but in peace. He has gone across the river and into the trees, and he has gone cleanly, honorably, and fully loved. No greater ending can any man ask for. Cantwell understood long before his final days that soldiers are shaped not by their victories, but by their scars. A man who has never been wounded, never known exhaustion to the point of collapse, never knelt in the mud while death passed inches from his face, cannot understand the quiet gravity of living. War carves lines into a man's soul the way winter carves cracks into old stone. The damage is invisible to the eye, but it is permanent, unyielding, always present beneath the surface of every calm gesture, every quiet pause, every moment of unspoken stillness, though he had carried physical wounds for decades, wounds that weathered with him, that aged alongside his bones. There was the bullet wound in his shoulder from the First War, a dull persistent ache that flared in cold weather, a constant physical reminder of a youth spent running toward gunfire. There were shrapnel fragments buried deep in his thigh, tiny pieces of war that never left his body, foreign remnants of violence he had survived. There was the damage to his heart, wrought by years of sleepless nights, of unrelenting stress, of marching for miles on empty stomachs, of watching men under his command die screaming in the dirt while he stood helpless to save them. These wounds were not glorious. They held no romance, no heroic legend, no noble purpose. They were simply damage. Ugly, unremarkable, human damage. And they taught him a lesson every young soldier learns too late. Survival is not a reward. Survival is a burden. It is a debt you owe to the dead, a debt you can never repay, a weight you carry with you every single day you continue to breathe when better men have stopped breathing entirely. Cantwell often sat alone in quiet rooms, in hotel lobbies, in empty restaurant booths, and thought of the boys who had not grown old. He thought of them not as statistics, not as names carved on stone monuments, not as faded photographs in military archives. He thought of them as living, breathing human beings. He remembered their laughter, their petty complaints, their quiet fears, their stupid youthful hopes, their small personal dreams that war had erased in an instant. He remembered the way they spoke of their mothers, their sweethearts, their hometowns, their plans for a peaceful future they would never reach. War strips men of their future. It freezes them forever in youth. The dead soldiers do not age. They do not grow tired, do not grow bitter, do not grow weak. They remain eternally young, eternally bright, eternally unbroken in the living memory of the men who outlived them. This is the quiet curse of the veteran, to grow old while all his ghosts stay young forever. And in his long hours of quiet solitude across those 3 final days, Cantwell walked through the streets of Venice and saw the faces of his dead comrades in every passing crowd. He saw their youthful eyes in the faces of young tourists, their tired shoulders in the posture of working men, their quiet hope in the laughter of children wandering the winter streets. He did not speak of these visions to anyone, not even Renata. Some grief is too private to share. Some memory is too heavy to lay on another soul. He loved Venice precisely because it held both war and peace in equal measure within its stone walls. The city had been occupied, had been threatened, had endured the shadow of fascist tyranny, yet it had never lost its quiet, stubborn beauty. The canals had continued to flow beneath gunfire and occupation. The church bells had continued to ring through bombing raids and curfews. The ordinary people had continued to live, to love, to cook their meals, to walk their streets, to endure. Venice taught him that beauty outlasts violence. Peace outlasts war. Life outlasts death. Though he would drive his car slowly along the waterfront roads, watching the pale winter sunlight glint off the still canal water, and recall the days when these same roads had echoed with military trucks, with marching boots, with the sharp commands of occupying soldiers. He remembered the tension in the air, the quiet fear of every civilian, the constant unspoken threat of violence hanging over every rooftop. Now the streets were soft and quiet, filled only with the gentle hum of ordinary life, with the quiet chatter of locals, with the slow drift of winter breezes through ancient stone archways. This contrast was not lost on him. He knew how fragile peace truly was. Peace is not a permanent condition. It is a temporary reprieve, a fragile balance held together by the courage of men willing to fight and die to preserve it. He had spent his entire life maintaining that balance, bleeding for it, suffering for it, losing friends for it. He did not regret a single battle he had fought, but he no longer believed in the empty rhetoric that glorified war as noble or righteous. War is nothing more than organized cruelty, he had come to understand. It is men forcing pain upon other men, destroying beauty, wasting youth, burning down the good things humanity builds slowly over generations. It solves nothing permanently. It only rearranges suffering, shifts loss from one side to the other, leaves behind broken bodies and broken souls and endless unspoken grief that lingers for decades after the guns fall silent. He spoke plainly of this truth to Renata on their quiet drives through the Italian countryside, his voice steady, unemotional, stripped of all drama. He told her that soldiers do not fight for flags or slogans or political ideologies. They fight for each other. They fight so the man standing beside them will not die alone. They fight out of loyalty, out of duty, out of the desperate human need to protect the only family war allows them to have, their brothers in arms. Renata listened closely, her gaze steady and gentle, never shying away from the darkness of his words. She had grown up sheltered from the brutality of conflict, yet she possessed a natural wisdom, a quiet empathy that allowed her to understand the weight of his experiences without ever having endured them herself. She did not offer empty comfort, did not speak trivial words of sympathy, did not tell him the common meaningless phrases people use to soothe suffering they cannot comprehend. She simply stayed present, letting his truth settle between them, honoring his honesty with her silence and her full attention. This quiet understanding was the foundation of their love. It was not built on physical attraction alone, though that existed soft and true. It was built on mutual respect, on unspoken recognition, on the rare connection between two souls who see each other completely, without pretense, without mask, without the false faces people wear for the world. She saw his brokenness and loved it. He saw her unspoiled purity and cherished it. They completed what the other had lost, what the other could never reclaim. Cantwell often sat watching her in the soft lamplight of small restaurants, studying the gentle curve of her cheek, the quiet brightness of her eyes, the easy grace of her hands as she lifted her glass or cut her food, and felt a profound, aching gratitude. He had spent decades surrounded by hardness, by violence, by the sharp, brutal edges of wartime existence. He had forgotten what softness felt like, what pure, unguarded goodness looked like, what it meant to be seen not as a soldier, not as a colonel, not as a veteran, but simply as a man. Renata gave him that gift. She stripped away every title, every scar, every memory of war, every weight of command, and loved only the core of him, the quiet, decent, enduring human soul beneath the soldier's tough exterior. He knew he was far too old for her, that their love existed outside the boundaries of ordinary life and conventional expectation. He knew the world would judge it, would misunderstand it, would reduce their sacred, gentle connection to trivial romance or inappropriate infatuation. He did not care. The world had never understood soldiers anyway. It did not understand their grief, their silence, their endurance, their quiet dignity. It would never understand the pure, redemptive love that blooms between a dying man and a young girl who sees his goodness. Hemingway's Iceberg style thrives in these unspoken tensions. On the surface, the novel is simply the record of 3 quiet days between an aging colonel and a young Italian woman. Beneath the surface lies an entire ocean of unspoken emotion: regret, gratitude, longing, acceptance, grief, and the purest form of human devotion. Every quiet pause in their conversation holds more weight than any dramatic monologue. Every soft glance carries more meaning than any shouted declaration of love. Cantwell's driver, a quiet, steady local man who knew the colonel well, observed their bond without comment. He had driven Cantwell through these countryside roads for years, had watched him grow older, weaker, more quiet with every passing season. He had seen the colonel meet Renata, had seen the slow, gentle transformation that came over the old soldier once love had settled in his final days. He said nothing of what he saw. He knew better than to intrude on sacred quiet. He simply drove steady, kept the car smooth on winter roads, waited patiently through their long silent moments, respected the colonel's final pace. The small towns they passed through in the Italian foothills were quiet, unassuming, untouched by the rush of modern life. Stone villages clung to mountain slopes, their rooftops dusted with faint winter frost, their narrow streets lined with old stone buildings that had stood for centuries through war and peace. Church spires rose gentle against the pale blue winter sky. Farmers worked slowly in their barren winter fields, tending to dormant soil, moving with the unrushed rhythm of people rooted deeply in place and season. Cantwell would point out small details to Renata as they drove: the way the mountain light shifted at midday, the faint steam rising from distant valley streams, the shape of old wartime bunkers half hidden in overgrown hillsides, the worn stone bridges that had survived marching armies and passing centuries alike. He pointed out beauty and history and loss side by side, teaching her to see the world not as a simple, uncomplicated place, but as a landscape laid with memory, with struggle, with quiet endurance. He told her of fighting in these very mountains, of marching through these villages in rain and snow and heat, of sleeping on cold stone floors, of eating hard bread and stale rations while the local families shared what little food they possessed with exhausted foreign soldiers. He told her of the kindness of ordinary Italian people during war, how they had sheltered strangers, fed tired soldiers, offered warmth and compassion amid chaos and cruelty. These were the true victories of war, he told her, not territory gained, not lines redrawn on maps, but small human acts of goodness that survived even when all else crumbled. Renata absorbed every word, storing his wisdom like precious treasure. She asked gentle, thoughtful questions, never probing too deep into his pain, never pushing him to relive trauma unnecessarily. She asked about the beauty he had seen amid war, about the goodness that had persisted through darkness, about the hope that had kept him going through endless days of suffering and loss. She chose to focus on his humanity, not his suffering, on his goodness, not his scars. In doing so, she gave him something no war, no injury, no lifetime of struggle had ever given him: pure, unburdened peace. As the second of his 3 final days faded into winter dusk, Cantwell and Renata walked along the quiet waterfront of a small lakeside village. The wind had softened, leaving the air crisp and still. The water lay smooth as polished stone, reflecting the pale pink and gold hues of the setting winter sun. There were no crowds, no noise, no distraction. Only the two of them, the quiet water, the distant shadow of snow-capped mountains, and the slow, gentle passing of time. They walked slowly, matching each other's pace, their shoulders nearly touching, their hands occasionally brushing in quiet, unspoken affection. They spoke little. There was no need for words. After a lifetime of noise, of commands, of shouted orders, of the endless thunder of war, Cantwell had finally found a silence that felt full rather than empty, a silence that nourished his soul rather than hollowed it out. He thought then of how most men spend their lives chasing noise. They chase success, status, wealth, glory, loud triumphs and public praise. They fill every empty moment with distraction, afraid of the quiet, afraid of their own thoughts, afraid of confronting the truth of their own lives. A lifetime of war had taught Cantwell to cherish silence. Silence was where truth lived. Silence was where healing settled. Silence was where a man could finally stop running and simply exist. Renata stopped walking and turned to face him, her eyes soft in the fading twilight. She did not speak of death, did not name his fading health, did not acknowledge the ticking clock of his final days. She simply looked at him with complete, unreserved love, and said that these quiet days with him were the most precious days of her entire life. Cantwell felt his heart ache, not with pain, but with pure, overwhelming gratitude. He had spent 50 years living for duty, for war, for sacrifice, for the quiet burden of protecting others. In his final days, he was finally allowed to live for joy, for love, for simple, uncomplicated human happiness. That night, as they dined in the village inn, the innkeeper's wife recognized Cantwell immediately. She was an older woman now, her face lined with age and quiet labor, but her eyes still held the same warmth he remembered from the war years. She came to their table personally, bringing them fresh bread, warm olive oil, a small plate of local olives, a glass of rich regional red wine. She spoke softly of how the village had never forgotten the American colonel who had fought for their freedom, who had treated their people with respect when so many soldiers had treated them with contempt. She told him that the local children still heard stories of the gentle foreign officer who had spared their village from destruction, who had stood guard over their homes while they slept, who had never asked for thanks or recognition for what he had done. Cantwell did not boast, did not accept praise, did not dwell on the memory. He simply nodded gently, thanked her for her kindness, and returned his attention to Renata. He had never fought for praise. He had never fought for memory. He had fought only to protect ordinary people, ordinary lives, ordinary quiet happiness, the very happiness he was now privileged to experience in his final hours. On the third and final day of his life, Cantwell woke. Early, before the winter sun had crested the mountains, before the city of Venice had stirred awake. He lay quiet in his hotel bed, his body calm, his mind clear. He could feel his heart laboring softly, could sense the slow, gentle winding down of his body's strength. There was no fear, no panic, no resistance. There was only quiet acceptance. He rose slowly, dressed carefully in his neat, worn coat, and walked through the pre-dawn streets of Venice. The city was utterly still, wrapped in the hush of early winter morning. The canals were dark and glassy, reflecting the faint pale light of the approaching sunrise. The air was sharp and clean, Filled with the quiet promise of a new day he would not fully live to see, he walked once more through the public garden, returning to the wooden bench where he had sat at the opening of his final 3 days. The ducks still swam in the cold water, moving slow and unhurried, unchanged by the passing of time, unaffected by the quiet tragedy of one man's ending. He sat down quietly, resting his tired body on the familiar wood, and watched them move across the water to end this final quiet moment of solitude. He reviewed his entire life without bitterness or regret. He saw his youthful courage, his endless endurance, his loyal service, his quiet kindness. He saw his mistakes, his failures, his moments of weakness, the lives he could not save. He acknowledged all of it, the good and the bad, the glory and the grief, and he accepted it fully. It was his life. It was complete. It was enough. He thought of Renata, of her gentle smile, her quiet wisdom, her pure and unwavering love. He thanked the quiet universe for granting him this final, perfect gift, for letting him know true beauty and true love before he crossed the river and entered the trees. He did not mourn the shortness of their time together. He celebrated its purity, its perfection, its unspoiled goodness. The sun rose slowly over the Venetian rooftops, spilling soft golden light across the canal water, across the winter garden, across the old soldier sitting quiet on the bench. The light had no warmth, just as it had not on the first day of his final 3 days. But now he did not need warmth. He had already known the greatest warmth the human soul can know: love, peace, acceptance, and the quiet dignity of a life fully lived. He rose from the bench slowly, his joints stiff with age and old wounds, his body tired beyond measure. He walked back through the waking city, ready to spend his final hours with the only person who made his fading existence feel eternal. He would love her fully until his last breath. He would cherish every remaining second of their borrowed peace. He would meet his end cleanly, honorably, without fear, without sorrow, without complaint. This is the quiet genius of Hemingway's final masterpiece. It does not sensationalize death. It does not romanticize love. It does not glorify war. It simply tells the plain, unvarnished truth of what it means to be human, to suffer, to endure, to love fiercely, to find beauty in decline, to find peace in ending. All of Hemingway's literary journey leads to this quiet, profound conclusion. The young men of his early novels run from war, run from pain, run from suffering, desperate to escape the cruelty of the world. The mature men of his middle novels stand and fight, choosing sacrifice and duty amid inevitable defeat. The old man of Across the River and Into the Trees does not run, does not fight, does not resist. He simply endures, loves, accepts, and fades with quiet grace. The river comes for every living thing. Time carries away every youth, every strength, every joy, every temporary glory. The trees wait at the end of every path, quiet and inevitable. But how a man crosses the river defines the entirety of his life. Richard Cantwell crosses not as a broken victim of war and time, but as a whole man, loyal, kind, loving, dignified, and at peace with every part of his hard, beautiful, fully lived life. His story lingers, quiet and unshakable, beneath the plain spare sentences of Hemingway's prose. It is a story for every person who has suffered, every person who has endured, every person who has grown tired and worn by the weight of living. It teaches us that endings are not failures. Fading is not defeat. Aging is not tragedy. The true victory of life is to love purely, endure bravely, and meet the inevitable end with gentle, unwavering dignity. The old soldier crossed the river and entered the trees. And though his body faded into the quiet winter dark, his love, his wisdom, his quiet courage, and his unbreakable humanity remained forever alive in the still, beautiful spaces between the words of Hemingway's most intimate, most profound, and most underrated literary treasure.